Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. And today I'm joined by Brian Hall. And Brian is a founding member and the managing attorney at Traverse Legal. Very excited to be diving into the business, about his journey, about transitions in life as he continues to grow this particular business, all the fun stuff that the entrepreneurship. So, Brian, thank you for taking the time to be here with me today. Let's start with a little bit of background. Tell us a little bit about your general overview background of where you've been to where you are today, and then tell us about Traverse Legal.
Yeah, happy to be here. Appreciate you having me on. If I try and summarize the last 43 years of my life, I think it'd be tough. So we'll go with it this way. I'm often asked, what do you do is the first question, right? And most people would say, I'm a lawyer. I'm the managing partner at Traverse Legal. I tend to steer clear of that. And here's why. If you only give that answer to that question, it's kind of limiting, especially as an attorney, right? You could be pigeonholed in a certain way. So what I typically will say is, I'm the last lawyer you'll ever have to hire. And the reason I do that is it tells more about what I do. It tells what I want to do with my clients or with people that I may be creating a long-lasting relationship with as their trusted advisor. So, for 16 years now, I've been a lawyer. And I think during that time frame, I've learned that I'm different as a lawyer and I want to project differently. And that's one way that I do it, Tanner.
Oh man, I love that. The last lawyer you'll ever have to hire. Talk about a great tagline. So let's talk about that. Why are you the last one that anyone will have to hire? Kind of give us that answer, and then maybe that kind of dovetails into, who is it specifically that you love to work with the most?
Yeah, good questions. So, I'm not the last lawyer anybody will have to hire because they never want to hire a lawyer. Let's start with saying that, right? But at the end of the day, the reason I want to be the last lawyer somebody hires is because I want to be that trusted advisor, the first call that they make. And if I can't handle it, I know somebody that can, and I will put them in touch with that person. By being that, I know that I'm adding value and that, like I said before, I'm building a trusted relationship. And that's what I'm here for. At the end of the day, I'm going to be an attorney for a bunch of years throughout, the rest of my career. And I want to work with people that I enjoy working with and build a relationship that's more than just a transactional experience. And, as I look at doing that, it's important to find that right customer, right? And you ask that question is, who is the ideal client or ideal customer? To me, it's somebody that wants the exact same thing that I just said. They want somebody that's going to be part of their universe going forward, not somebody that's going to, charge a fee or bill some hours to solve a small problem they might have right now.
Hmm. So if we kind of break this out a little bit, I know for those that are listening that have experienced using attorneys in the past and all that kind of stuff, there tends to be some that are very specific to business law, some that are very specific to some personal things. Kind of what is there a specific lane that you and your team specifically are excellent at, or kind of what does that look like for you if someone were to say what type of law is best served by hiring you?
Yeah. So, Traverse Legal's background, our sort of genesis was intellectual property and technology law. And we've since grown that and expanded it. We do a ton of corporate and business law and really represent anybody from founders to repeat founders to emerging companies to both publicly and privately owned companies. And me specifically, I'm a bit unique from the standpoint that the first half of my career, I was doing litigation. I was traveling a ton. I was in federal court, state court doing, IP litigation primarily. And now for the past 9 years plus, I've been doing more transactional work. So at this point in time, what I like to say, and I think summarizes it best, is we're deal lawyers. And that means we're going to help you with your most important transaction and get a deal done. But what we also are is when a deal goes poorly, we can jump in and help navigate how to resolve that. And if that's in court, we can do that too.
Beautiful. I love that. That is a fantastic way to just kind of put a bow on it, make it simple for people to understand. So I appreciate that. I'd love to take kind of a step back and talk about this journey into um, really kind of two parts. I'd love to hear kind of what got you into law, first of all, and then as you got into this level of profession or this line of work, making that transition to being a founding member of Traverse Legal. What did that transition look like for you in this journey?
Yeah, so a bit non-traditional from the standpoint of, my background was actually I was a consultant before I went to law school. I worked for a company called Accenture, and I was doing management consulting and heavy into technology. And I always had the idea that I wanted to be a lawyer, but what kind of lawyer, I wasn't entirely sure. And technology just spoke to me. So once I married technology and intellectual property specifically, that led me to law school. And then coming out of law school, I had a couple options. I could go the traditional route, go join a big firm and sort of be the lockstep path that quite frankly, I'd been on at Accenture, or I could go join a startup law firm in Michigan. And that's what I chose. I joined a couple attorneys who had been practicing almost 20 years and, jumped at the opportunity to have a mentor and utilize that as I grew my career. And that sort of non-traditional route just continued because I practiced in Michigan for 8 years and then decided it was time to grow the footprint of the firm. And I moved down to Austin. I moved my entire family. I had a 6-week-old, I had a 3-year-old. My wife was questioning a lot of our moves, but supportive as always. And we found ourselves in Austin, the hotbed of technology and growth. And I wish I could say that I was a soothsayer, but I think some of it was luck and fortune. And, I feel fortunate to be here now and be growing the firm accordingly.
That's fantastic. And I've got to, make the note because we had a chance to chat, a couple weeks ago before jumping on here. And
Yeah.
I can, we'll say, empathize with the, coming cross country with, young kids and all of that kind of stuff. I did that about 4-ish years ago with a, let's see, probably 3-year-old and about a 3-month-old, something like that. So very similar situation. And there's a lot there to just say congratulations on making that move, regardless of what the outcome was in terms of starting business, starting a different job, whatever it is. That there's a lot to that. So awesome to make that. I can empathize with that piece there.
We're still standing, Tanner. That's what matters, right?
That's right. That is absolutely true. Yeah. So I'm curious, as you join a startup law firm now, moving into moving down to Austin, growing the footprint, continue to grow a business. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along this journey from a business standpoint? So I'm sure there's been a tremendous amount you've learned from a legal standpoint in building kind of your profession, your career, and your skill set. But from a business aspect, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest lesson is transitioning from working in the business, which in the practice of law is just putting your head down and billing hours, right? To working on the business. And what I mean by that is when you're working on the business, you're creating a culture at the firm. You're creating a place where attorneys and staff want to join and be part of something special. You're creating a place where clients want to be part of it and want to utilize your services. You're doing all the things that, regardless of what the offering is, a business that's going to be successful has to do. So for me, learning to transition from just the daily grind of billing hours to doing some of that, and more importantly, building it in a way that will be a place for, like I said, employees and clients alike, is the way you cross the chasm, so to speak.
No, such a good piece to note there and go through. And I'm curious for you, how did that transition start to take place? Was it just hey, one day I need to flip the switch and start working on the business, or was it a gradual process? What were some of the things that you had to change? I want to say internally, kind of mindset, things like that. How did you make that adjustment from really being I'm working in the business all the time to now I'm shifting to working on the business?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I thought about a lot. And, if I have to summarize what the driving force for that was, I would say impact. And what I mean by that is, I knew what I could accomplish and what my existing team could accomplish given where we were. And there was great things, but I wanted more. I wanted to bring on more team. I wanted to show them that there was a better way to practice law. I wanted to go attract more clients and give them the types of services that I know we have successfully given others. So the only way that was going to happen is if I picked my head up, looked around and said, let's go. Let's build this bigger than it is right now and make that kind of impact. So it was very intentional, but make no mistake about it, Tanner. I mean, it was not easy and it continues to not be easy. It is a constant struggle to make sure that I keep that impact as my true north, as opposed to maybe the mighty almighty dollar or something else. So it's a work in progress.
So on that, things are not always easy. Things are challenging from time to time. So you look back on really just this time frame of being in Austin, growing the footprint, growing the business. We'll call it a memorable. It can be defined. You can state this however you want to take it, but a roadblock or kind of challenge that you came up against and had to overcome in kind of this journey from being down here in Austin, continuing to grow the business. Is there any kind of memorable roadblock or hurdle that you came up against that you've had to overcome?
There's definitely a lot of hurdles along the way. If I have to think of one specifically that stands out, and I remember it vividly after I had moved down here. And like I told you before, sort of the genesis of the firm was intellectual property with a focus on both transaction and litigation. And I had a prospective client that said, look, we've worked with you a long time. We love what you do, but you don't do enough. And I said, whoa, wait, what? And what he said was, I want you to handle these other aspects of the legal needs that we have. And that was hard for me because when somebody gives me a challenge or says, this is what we need, I want to meet it. I want to deliver. I want to people please in some ways. And I knew I didn't have all the skill sets to do that. So the light bulb went off of go build the team, go bring in the additional resources that will serve that need. And it sounds easy looking back on it because now that's such a core part of our practice. And specifically, it relates to corporate and securities work. But at the time, 8+ years ago, it was not easy. And having to overcome that is what has allowed us to really grow. And we've repeated that now. That model of going and bringing in the talent to expand our service offerings is now core to what we do.
So do you look towards the future over the next short term, 6 to 12 months, but longer term, say 3 to 5 years, kind of what's on the horizon for you in Traverse Legal? What gets you out of bed in the morning to continue to have that impact that you desire to have? Kind of what does that look like as you look forward into the future?
People. I mean, to me, it's simple. It's prioritizing people. And that's both within the four walls of this firm, attracting people that want to be part of this journey, that trust that we're here to not only develop them professionally, but personally as well, to the extent they want it. And then outside the four walls of the firm, it's our clients, right? It's the people we work with day in and day out. And we talked about it a little bit at the outset, right? Making sure we're aligned with our clients as to what their goals are and how we're going to accomplish them. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning and sometimes keeps me up in bed at night, worrying about the things that need to happen. But that's the juice that I've chosen to drink, and I'm going to keep drinking it.
Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about success. And I always love to ask the question of kind of what are your keys to success? So if I can kind of set the stage for this, by most objective measures, I think I know I will consider you to be successful. You've made transitions in your life. You've gotten to the point of building a business. You're continuing to grow. Things are happening. That, at least in my definition, is success. So I always like to ask, kind of, what are the things that you attribute your success to? Whether it's things that you do every day, it can be people that you surround yourself with, whatever it is. But I'm curious for you, when you look back on your journey thus far, what would you say, or what do you attribute your success to?
I'd say a couple things. Excuse me. I'd say the first one would be good habits. Putting things in place for myself, either physically or in relationships or professionally, that are sort of on cruise control to make sure that I'm doing those things and trusting that if I do those things, that will lead to putting me in the best position for success. And I've read a lot about, habits and tried to curb bad habits and increase good habits. So habits is one. And then the second, as odd as it might sound, just the want to. If I make the decision that I'm going to go do something, there's a darn good chance that I'm going to accomplish it because I refuse to entertain the alternative. And that too can be a good and a bad thing, because success is a hard thing to define. And what I've found is, with a lot of ambitious people, Tanner, you included, is you reach a milestone and all of a sudden that's no longer success, and it becomes a discounted thing in your head. And as I've gotten older, I try and be mindful of that and take a little bit of stock in some of the things that have gone really well, and that if you would have told me 20 years ago I would have accomplished, I would have been ecstatic. But at the same time, it's not going to satiate my appetite, right? I know if I'm here to build something bigger, I'm going for it.
Powerful stuff. And I want to be respectful of time here, so there's just a couple things I'd love to kind of dive into quickly before we wrap up today. And the first one is around advice. So advice is one of those things that I could sit here and say, hey, what's the best piece of advice that you've gotten, or what's the worst piece? Or because advice is such a, depending on where you're at, the advice may hit differently, right? So I always like to ask the question of, what's maybe one of the most, doesn't have to be the most, but what's one of the most memorable pieces of advice that you've ever been given, whether that's good, bad, kind of the outcome, whatever that takes. But what's a memorable piece of advice that you've been given along your journey?
It's a great question. So when I think about advice, I know that when I try and give advice, I try and give it with empathy. That's always been sort of a core tenet of mine. And I think it's really important to be mindful of how you present the advice given a person's particular situation. In terms of the best advice that I've been given, like I said, I've been blessed with a lot of, great family, great friends, great mentors, professionally and otherwise, that have given me a ton of great advice. If I had to hone in on one, it'd probably be from my law partner, who always talks about reaching one's true potential and not, being led astray if you've set your mind on reaching something. So that's always been something that sticks out to me, that, we all have potential, and wasted talent's a bad thing to me. So use your talent and go try and accomplish that potential.
Love it. Phenomenal advice. And I appreciate the, giving advice with empathy. I wrote that down. That's hadn't thought of that concept before. Really cool. So I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. Before we wrap up on kind of the final question, I always love to end these interviews on, for the audience, where can they go to find out more information about Traverse Legal? How can they, connect with you or find out more information about you specifically? Give us some details on where's the best place to send people to find out more and make some connections.
Yeah, so online is the easiest spot to go. Our website's traverselegal.com. And then we also have a site called traversegc.com, which is geared towards where we serve as outside general counsel to companies. So tons of content we regularly put out on that. And then another place where you can learn a lot more about me is on my LinkedIn profile. Go Brian Hall is the LinkedIn profile, and I do a monthly newsletter called the Value Added Advisor. So subscribe to that. I think there's some good nuggets within it on a monthly basis, and yeah, go from there.
Beautiful. I love it. And these interviews are totally about connection and learning about other businesses and understanding that. So I'm going to encourage everyone who's watching. I'll put the links in the description below. When we're finished up here, go click on those. Connect with Brian or follow him on LinkedIn. Subscribe to that newsletter. Phenomenal pieces there. I mean, the more education we can take in and understand and make connections with is very powerful. So encourage everyone to go take that step, go check it out. But Brian, as we wrap up here, I always love to ask, what is most inspiring to you today?
Right now, I'd say my daughter. So I mentioned them earlier. They are now 9 and 12 years old, which is crazy to think, but they have an amazing appetite for learning right now. They are both signed up to Duolingo, I believe it's called Duolingo. They're going to yell at me for messing that up if I did. But long story short, we have a trip planned in July to Europe. So one of my daughters is learning French and the other is learning Spanish, and seeing them light up as they learn, seeing them want to continue to do it and hit daily milestones and monthly milestones is absolutely inspiring to me, because I've always been a big believer that if you want to do something and have the commitment to learn it, you have a real good chance of doing so.
I love that. That is fantastic. Man, multi-language. That's always one of those things that is inspiring, because I struggle with putting in time to do it myself. Essentially thought about it a couple times, but never actually taking the full action to do it. So that is really cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, to share your story a little bit with the audience, with telling us a little bit more about Traverse Legal. I'm going to once again suggest everyone click the links in the description below, go connect with Brian, subscribe to the newsletter, all of that fun stuff. But Brian, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate you. So thank you very much.